Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. McGill University is on land that has long served as a meeting site and exchange among Indigenous people, including the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe nations. We acknowledge and thank the diverse Indigenous peoples whose presence marks the territory on which people of the world now gather. And today's presentation is about people. It's about other living beings, their territory, and how they are being impacted by human activities. But it is also about how they have been observed by our speaker, who has spent most of his career telling stories of what he has witnessed. We're privileged to have Jean Lemire as our 2022 Environment Public Lecturer this year. This public lecture is made possible by the contribution of a generous anonymous donor who makes possible several outreach activities, and these opportunities are really valuable to enrich the university experience and contribution of universities to society, and they were sorely missed during the pandemic. Actually, we've been discussing about this talk for 2.5 years, and it's only today that we're finally managing to have it. Maybe a few words about our speaker. Jean Lemire is born in Drummondville. He was trained as a biologist, but he quickly developed two passions, whales and filming. Though he occasionally found himself in front of the camera, it is for his work as producer of documentaries that he's best known for. Among other things, about documentaries from whales. Over the years, he rented boats for his missions, and he quickly realized that there were limitations in the boats that he was renting, and he was dreaming of having a large sailboat equipped for documentaries. And it took 12 years of consulting ads and gathering information until he found the pearl that he was looking for that became the SEDNA IV. With Mario Cyr, cameraman, and a few other people, dreamers, believers, he managed to acquire it, transform it, and especially transform it for documentaries and for live transmissions wherever on the boat, around the world the boat was. And autonomy was particularly important, and the sailboat is practical in that respect. And that advanced telecom allowed him to share almost daily what was happening on the boat and allowing people to communicate with the crew and live the experience that the crew was living on board the SEDNA IV. He traveled around the world with his boat. It started with a travel around Canada, basically traveling all around through the Northwest Passage, through the ice, and once that worked, well, decided to follow whales on the St. Lawrence and then up to Greenland. And then he had two more travels that were bolder. The first one was spending a year in Antarctica, literally mooring the boat in the winter over there, and then travel as part of the Decade for Biological Diversity around the world for 1,000 days. So 1,000 days for a planet, where he basically traveled in many places to try to document what was happening in different places, how people were coping with climate change, having a variety of experiences along the way. These documentaries have had great impact on people. He's won many awards, Gemini Awards for his production videos, documentaries. He was the officer of the Order of Canada. He was ambassador for biodiversity of the Green Wave Ambassador for Biodiversity, named by Ban Ki-moon in 2010. He has at least 2 doctorates. Honoris causa from Quebec universities. And in the past 5 years, he's been acting as envoy for climate change in the Quebec Ministry of Northern Affairs, where he's basically discussing with business and government leaders about climate, biodiversity, and Quebec government plans to tackle these issues. He's written a few books, some of them describing his experience, some of them a bit more positive, sometimes describing his frustrations. And today he is introducing the Odyssey of Change.
Hi, everybody. It's a great honor to be here tonight. Thank you for being here. You will have to endure my funny accent all night, but that's life. Thanks to McGill. After 2.5 years, finally, we are here together. It's a real privilege. Tonight, I would like to propose an odyssey around the world. It is the story of men and women who embark on a special journey, a journey where we have decided to put our life really for a cause, environment. And very often I'm in front of all that, but it's really a question of a crew, of a team, and I should really thank them for all the sacrifice that they did. I'm a biologist, yes, a whale biologist who turned bad and started to make film and write books about climate change and biodiversity. In all our expedition, we always add scientists on board. It was, for me, very important. It was a way to bring more money to the scientists, because we were lucky enough at that time to be able to make, big films, big expedition, and we were traveling around the world, so it was perfect for scientists. So we always combine science and so I spent lots of time in my career, from the magnificent Gulf of St. Lawrence to Azores and lots of different places. I worked with the Mingan Island Station Study for many years. We started, Richard Sears and the team started the photo ID, photo identification of blue whale. I spent lots of time there. I then moved to Hawaii in winter. I know. And my job was to swim with whales during their mating behavior. So I just, went underwater with my little camera, tried to document, the behavior of all those males circling around one female, and it was, I learned a lot on whales, of course. In 2001, I was crazy enough to buy a boat with some friends. I'm still paying that nice boat. So the SEDNA IV, 51 meters, 165 feet long, 3-mast sailboat, capable of long journeys in isolated conditions, because we wanted to explore the Arctic. And at that time, 2001, climate change was not very popular and well known by the public. And I really thought that scientists needed a strong voice. So, so we bought the boat, and in 2002, we embarked on our first mission, the Arctic mission, and started to document the effect of climate change in the Arctic. That's an amazing place. If you have the chance one day to go in the Arctic, it's great. And people living there, it's really spectacular. Even at that time, polar bear in the southern part of the Arctic started to have problems with climate change. But at that time, lots of people thought that we were kind of crazy, talking about climate change and saying, well, it's going to come and it's going to be very important. And it was not very, very popular at that time. But we did it. And we knew at that time that communication was the key to touch people. So we sent 5 film crews in 2002 around the Arctic. We, like I said, it's spectacular. I saw things in the Arctic that even if you go there today, those things didn't exist anymore. Because it's changing really, really rapidly. But, I mean, in the United States, places like this would be turned to national park. It's just amazing. We spend also lots of time at the flow edge. The flow edge is where the sea breaks the ice in spring. And so all the animals are there, and it's very, very spectacular as well. Very often we have to move our camp because the ice is breaking really fast. And it's also the place where, of course, you have the polar bear, the seals, the birds, everything is there at the same time. And the Inuit also hunt at the flow edge. The Inuit are the people who showed me everything. The ice, and we used their technology when we were in Antarctica. They show me the respect of nature as well. And really, I learned a lot from the Inuit. So we decided to make the Northwest Passage a crazy idea at that time, to be honest, in 2002, when the Arctic was very, very different. Lots of ice. Lots of, see that blue ice there? This is old ice, 2, 3, 4 years old. This is just like concrete. So with our little sailboat, if you hit that, it could be fatal. So that blue ice doesn't exist anymore. All the old ice is gone. So when you see ice in the Arctic right now, that ice is only, few months or maximum 1 year old. And it melts every summer. So it's very, very different. What we did is we went and battled against the ice. And in September, the ice in the middle of the Arctic trapped us. The new ice was already forming, and so we were kind of trapped there. We had no other choice but trying to force our way through the ice. That was in 2002. We returned at the same place, same date, 13 years after. Only 13 years. And the difference was spectacular.
In 2002, while attempting the Northwest Passage, SEDNA IV is blocked, stuck in shifting sheets of ice that endanger the big schooner. The wait seems endless, but the safety of everyone aboard comes down to one quick decision. Kilometers of drifting ice present a serious threat. The crew, supported by a reconnaissance plane from the Canadian Ice Service, is at an impasse. The ice cover is so thick that any attempt to force the ship through could prove fatal. But it's almost fall in the Arctic, and a solid sheet of ice could form at any moment, trapping the big schooner. Out of options, the crew gets set to forge ahead, come what may. These are precisely the conditions they wanted to avoid. The banging and grinding of the ice against the steel hull is unsettling. Progress is slow and difficult, but the big ship powers up her engines to push large drifting slabs of ice out of the way. Finally, an opening. After hours searching for small leads, SEDNA is able to break free of the ice. She becomes the 7th sailing ship in history to navigate the Northwest Passage in a single season without an icebreaker to assist. The big ship has returned to the same spot on the same date 13 years later to observe the effects of warming in the Arctic. The difference is overwhelming. Sea ice is just a memory in a number of parts of the Arctic in summer.
Years. That's really, really something. And the science is clear. Spring arrives earlier. Fall arrives later. So, of course, winter is now shorter. The sea ice is melting everywhere, on land, on the ocean. So that creates a lack of albedo effect. The albedo effect is just like a mirror. If you have a white surface, it will reflect all the heat, all the sun rays. For example, if it's 35 degrees in Montreal, what kind of shirt you will use? Probably not a big black shirt. You know, you will want to go with something light and white. It's the same thing in the Arctic. You know, if you replace that white by something really dark, like the surface of the ocean or the land, then it will capture that heat. And then it started to go faster and faster. When you hear about climate change, you very often hear about, you know, we're heading to 2.7, 2.8, let's say 3 degrees, you know. This is an average for the world. For us here, you have to double that. So it's not 3 degrees, it's 6 degrees for here. For the Arctic, it's 9 degrees. So when you hear that, you know, we came back from Glasgow and said, well, we're probably around 2.7, 2.8. Nope, that's for the entire world. But just think of the effect here. Right now, we're at 1.1. And look how the weather systems are crazy. Just think about 6 degrees. And just think about 9 degrees up north. It's completely different. Everything will change. So when people are saying we have to act now, it's not a joke. Anyway. So after our journey in the Arctic, we were convinced, of course, that we had to do more. So I had that crazy idea to go to Antarctica. That was a crazy idea. So we finally left in 2005. It always takes like 2 years to prepare an expedition like this, just to find the money and all that, and make all the science program that will benefit from our expedition. So we left in 2005. This is our route. We spent lots of time in the Falklands Island in South Georgia, where really, I mean, just, it's so beautiful there. It's the relationship we had with the fauna is just, you know, amazing. They were waiting for us, you know. We went to different places. We worked with the scientists of the British Antarctic Survey on Bird Island. It's a magnificent place. They are isolated there for months. Normally, you don't have access to that island. We had a special permission, so I remember some very great party there with them. Isolation sometimes create, you know, some occasions. So, but that was really, really something. Also, that relationship that you have with the fauna that is not scary. I mean, it's incredible. We should bring all the politicians there. I mean, they're going to change completely the way that they will see the nature. Lazen albatross. I mean, this is just amazing. So after a few months there, we headed to the Antarctic Peninsula. This was our route. And we also met with different research stations there. And we even decided to go really, really down south. always thinking of Shackleton. Shackleton, who was a great explorer, but we didn't want the same end, you know, so because we wanted to come back. So to be honest, don't forget that SEDNA IV is not an icebreaker. So we pushed a little bit our luck. We went really south. Probably the Canadian vessel who went, you know, who touched the southern border of Antarctica, because after that, I mean, there's no water. So, but that was very, very interesting. When you are in Antarctica, you have a strange feeling, actually. You have the feeling that you're kind of at the beginning of the world. It's so spectacular, and you feel so small. And for human, it's a good lesson to learn, you know, when you're surrounded by such a great landscape and you see all the forces of nature there. It's really, really impressive. Let me show you just some nice little places around the Antarctic Peninsula.
Dans le fond, on est quasiment juste à la sortie ici, là. Regarde dans le trou d'eau là-bas.
This is really typical of what we experience almost every day. You know, ice is, well, the temperature around the Arctic Peninsula. Oh, I'm going to ask you, just try to think, what was the average temperature for the winter month in Antarctica? I'm going to give you that answer later, but just think, make a number in your head. So we wanted to overwinter in Antarctica. That was a crazy idea, another one. And for that, we met with the Argentinian icebreaker Almirante Irizar just before they closed, all the research station and all that. You have to remember that the seasons are contrary from here, of course. When it's winter here, it's summer there, and vice versa. So with the Almirante Irizar, we were able to bring 24 tons of food for our winter. The winter there is 9 months, and 78,000 liters of fuel. That's what we needed to overwinter. We had some problem with the food. Of course, you make a list of what you want. It's coming from the continent, and there's sometimes some mistakes, and you cannot say, well, I'm going to change that for this, and it doesn't work like this. For example, we ordered 14 legs of lamb. We received 14 full lamb carcasses, It's not exactly what we all ordered, so we had to use the jigsaw and transform ourselves into butchers. So our plan was to overwinter in a very small bay near a former research station called Melchior. It was completely, we were there alone, nobody was living there anymore. And that small bay was perfect when you look at it. And we looked, with all the specialists and everything, because that bay is so small. And if you look, there's a kind of reef right in front. So that should, avoid the iceberg to get into the bay. So, it was just perfect. But of course, we had to work very, very hard to have moorings, to keep SEDNA there. So in March, we said, well, it's going to be fine. That little bay will be in ice, very soon. So, we will be trapped there. It's going to be perfect. So we send back home the captain and the first mate, of course, because we were not supposed to use the boat anymore. So, and you have to understand that we had no rescue possible. We were too far for a helicopter. So, when you decide to stay for winter, there's no other choice. So the last icebreaker that we saw was the last chance for the crew to come back home or to stay for winter. And saying yes to stay for winter means that, well, you will have to deal with all the crew. And this is the great crew who decided to stay for the 9 months of winter. Remember, we were already, we had 6 months of navigation around the Antarctic Peninsula, and we had 9 other months. So this is the great crew. There's, of course, scientists there, a cook, a mechanic, a psychologist, probably the best decision that I took to bring on board. Cameraman, divers, a doctor, a medicine doctor, an editor, and more scientists. So that was the crew, 13, 10 boys, 3 girls. So that was the great crew. So in that little bay, we were waiting for the ice. March arrived, we had rain all March. April arrived, we had rain during all April. That was not the plan, We were supposed to be ice trapped. So we were supposed to have, that nice reef who was supposed to avoid the icebreaker to come in the bay. Of course not. We had to move icebreaker, almost every day. Not icebreaker, but iceberg, sorry. So all our great plans was not exactly like we thought it was supposed to be. I'd like to bring you on one night on May 7, when wind hit at more than 130 kilometers per hour.
The winds regularly top 100 kilometers per hour, and the forecast for the days ahead is dismal. If the lines that keep us moored to the shore are snapped by the wind, our 650-ton vessel will be smashed on the rocks. Accepting the isolation and solitude of the long Antarctic winter to document climate change is one thing. Being its first victims would be another matter altogether.
The cable is underwater and held by another cable. I think the rock is broken off again. We're at 700 revs.
Because if we have to get out of here, we'll release the bridge.
Unhook the suspension bridge.
Get everything ready just in case.
As soon as Sebastian gets here, tell him to unhook the bridge, and you come with me in the Zodiac.
I'll go talk to Stevens. We have to be ready to go, because when they break, they break like matchsticks. We'll wait. You'll wait for our signal because I don't want any lines getting caught.
Caught in the propeller.
In the propeller. But if we have to get out, remember there's a reef right in front, so you have to go a little...
We have to bear the port.
A bit.
2 more lines have just given way to port. 2 port lines have given way. We'll try to fix that.
Sebastian! No, we're coming! Hang on!
Mario, what's happening is that the junction box fell into the water and short-circuited. Stevens has gone below to try to fix it. Okay, let's go!
We just lost another line!
There's still 4 lines to port, but just 1 left forward.
We have no time left, Mario. Forget the repairs and prepare to evacuate.
Lower the hook. We're bringing up the Zodiac.
Mario, the green rope!
Loose the line. Let it go.
Look, I suggest we stay at the ready, but the task be assigned on deck, but if it gives way, we get out of here.
We're out of here.
That's for sure.
We need to get everyone back in the wheelhouse and talk to everyone once. Hey, bring an axe, Mario. If you need to, just cut the lines.
Look at that one coming in, Stevens.
Yeah, that's a big one. Stand by to evacuate.
We won't have time for that meeting. We're going to have to...
Evacuate?
We'd have to evacuate.
Prepare to evacuate? There's no choice. We have to get out. Okay, Sands, get the axes. We're getting ready to leave now.
Okay, I'll go get the axes.
Emily, we'll go get the survival suits. I want them handy.
The stern lines. Let go all the stern lines. All the lines astern. Okay, we're free. You can go. Full ahead. We're not moving, Mario. We're not moving.
Have we dropped all the stern lines? That has to be clear.
No, the lines are still holding.
Okay, release them. Yes, cut the lines. Cut everything aft.
All right, we're moving. We're moving. Be very careful, Jean. We're going onto the reefs. Shift to starboard. Turn hard to starboard.
I lost the boat.
thruster. There must be a line caught in it.
1,100 revs. Okay, we'll keep the engine at 1,100 revs. We'll move further forward and wait.
Looking good. Hold it steady.
There's the coastline.
Okay, Jean, great. We're out. We're in the clear. Well clear of the reefs.
What a drag to have to leave.
Yeah. Yeah, and all the lines are cut.
We just left our winter mooring.
It was almost a miracle. We didn't hit the reef. Remember that we had no captain on board, so you know, everybody was looking at me do something. So I became the captain for that night. We didn't hit anything, but can you imagine with 78 liters of fuel in Antarctica? You know, it was not exactly the goal of our mission to create something like an oil spill and all that. So we were lucky. And so we finally find another bay right in front. We put the anchor there for 2 nights, just trying to, you know, to get calmer. We call our family. We call the media also because we, you know, more than 1 million people were following us on a day-to-day basis. And we asked them to, you know, not call, not send email. We just wanted to take, you know, a few days to decide what we will do after, you know, that big storm. So we finally went through small channels and we decided to go to a very, very small bay, very isolated. So we said to ourselves, well, here at least, you know, it's gonna be great. You know, there's so many channels, but the wind was following the channels and we were hit like night after night for a month. You know, it was very difficult. We had to move the boat for 1 month. It was a very, very difficult situation. But the crew was great because we were battling for our survival. So it was just, you know, amazing. And we were laughing of the situation at one point because it was so, I mean, it was just, you know, bad thing after bad thing. So we were laughing. But we had rain again. And it's funny because even the animals that were supposed to leave, because of course, when you have ice all around, like whales have to leave, but they all stayed with us because, you know, it was a very, very special. So we spent lots of time with whales. It was great. We spent lots of time with all the animals, and we were waiting for the ice. So May we had rain. We had rain in June. We had rain in July even. So that was really, really difficult. Then August arrived, and we had finally a little bit of ice in our little bay. Just in our little bay. All around it was open water. So all the animals that need ice for their life cycle became our neighbors. Because we were all in a situation where we all need ice. We were looking for ice. So us, the animals, we became a big family. So in August, finally, we had a little bit of ice.
ice, at last. Thin, but here. August brings hope. Finally, it seems, the ice has decided to form in our little bay.
You can see the ice bending.
Try to stand up now.
And here we are. Shall we do a little jig?
Crew morale seems to rise with the increasing daylight. We are gaining as much as 7 minutes of light with each passing day. Soon, the sun will rise above the walls of our icy prison.
I split the blue line in two. There we go again.
Well, it makes a change from being indoors.
Ice finally forms in our bay, but it's an exception. All around, as far as the eye can see, is open water. There is no longer any doubt. Winter will not have enough time to form the ice cover essential to life. The winter inhabitants need the ice to reproduce and perpetuate life. Crab-eater seals join us. Our ice-bound bay now represents the only hope for animals that need ice to reproduce and give birth. Here we are, a confederacy of victims gathered on our floating island, environmental refugees sharing the same land. The return of the ice seems to be healing our wounds and bringing together our captive spirits. Life becomes more harmonious among all species, and even the krill, the little shrimp-like crustacean, has come back with the pack ice. Krill, an essential food for many species of birds, fish, and mammals, needs ice to grow.
Cheers.
Chin chin.
Chin chin, Mariano. It would taste great on a cracker with a bit of butter.
In the deep waters of this little-known world, life comes in all shapes and colors, like a great moving fresco. So much strange and mysterious beauty. Wonders we hope will last forever.
underwater fauna was incredible, and we organized diving almost every day to document it. And of course, as proud Quebecers, we had to organize the first hockey game in Antarctica. By the way, we won that game against the penguin. The leopard seal was always around, and we had to really be careful. This is a beast that is not exactly your friend when you're underwater. All the animals who need the ice for their life cycle became our neighbor, like I said, like the Weddell seal, who also gave birth on ice around the boat. We had all kind of visitors, like the Adelie penguin was not supposed to be there, or like the emperor penguin who was not supposed to be there as well. So everything is kind of mixed up around the Antarctic peninsula. It was a very long winter. During the winter, we had 4 hours of daylight per day, and we never saw the sun itself. It was difficult, but the crew was great. Like I said, we had a psychologist on board, and he helped a lot. He had lots of job. But after a year, when we hit that 365e jour, then something happened inside of us. Because when you accept to make an expedition like this, you know that that you will change. But after a year, we knew we had our success story. We had lots of good science data. We had a film, but it was time to think of coming back home, and that was very difficult. Just to give you an idea of the kind of science that we did, we were taking, of course, the temperature and all the data every day. And we took the month of June, which is supposed to be the coldest month in winter in Antarctica. And we were able to compare it with 51 years of data coming from a research station around. And well, our month of June was 6 degrees higher than the average. 6 degrees. In 15 months, we stayed exactly 430 days altogether. What was, do you think, our coldest night during 15 months? Minus 14. It was colder in Montreal if you compare to Antarctica. And it's not a special year. Now it's like that around the Antarctic peninsula. You saw all the ice there. Just imagine if all that started to melt. It's going to be something. But we had to prepare our return. It was time to think about our families and friends, people that stay on the dock, people that they were taking care of everything in our life here. But when you accept to do an expedition like this, you accept to change. And being surrounded by this great nature transforms you completely. And then you are convinced that you want to change lots of things in your life. You don't want to live in the past anymore, and you want to make focus on the essentials in life. Probably because you were surrounded by, that great nature and animals for more than a year. And then, when you arrive home, you meet with your lovers, with your friends, and they represent the past. So that was probably the most difficult part of all the expedition. It's interesting because we were followed by NASA psychologists who prepared the Mars mission. And they were telling us, don't take any decision when you will come back home, because you have to wait, because it's going to be something. And it was something. For 15 months, we were living in a world where the noise of the city, or the smell of the city, or the cellular phone, or all that was not there anymore. And then you arrive, and you see your lovers, your friends, and that's a big clash, because they exactly represent what you decided to change. To be honest, on the 13 people on board, only one couple survived. All the rest just went, So it was very difficult to come back. Probably more difficult to come back here than the expedition itself. It's really something that is that marked, every person that lived that kind of experience. But we decided to continue and make another expedition. It's probably because, the sea is probably a second home for lots of us now. And so we started a mission on biodiversity called 1,000 Days for the Planet.
There's whales everywhere, everywhere.
At first, I wanted to document the impact of human on biodiversity, and I wanted to focus on good stories. So I said to myself, well, if we can show the simple beauty and complexity of nature, people will like what they saw, and then we have the tendency of protect what we like. So I said, well, that's a great concept, let's go. But I was confronted with a scene around the world that required a different approach. I couldn't say or do nothing in front of very, very difficult situation. I became a witness in front of a world where exploitation of resources is not sustainable. So I spend, days documenting the beauty of nature, but I also spend days with fishermen, for example, on a long-line fishing boat where they kill sharks by thousands and thousands. I spend a week with different villagers where they kill everything they can catch, even protected species. I navigated on 2 garbage patches and saw the effect of plastic in the oceans. On Midway Island, northeast of Hawaii, I followed Laysan albatross that go out at sea to find food for their chicks. They confuse plastic debris floating in the ocean with real food like squid and serve it as food. Every year, the Laysan albatrosses bring and serve 5 tons of plastic to their chicks. We found in their stomach all kinds of plastic like lighters, toothbrushes, kids' toy, and of course, pieces of plastic bags. In Indonesia, we followed the crazy rush for palm oil when company burns entire ancestral forests to convert the land to palm grove. When they do that, they kill 99.999% of all species. It's faster, but maybe not brilliant. I saw a lot of change, and it changed the way that I look to nature now. It also changed the look that I look at us humans. And I really believe that it's time for change. We have so many challenges in front of us, so many. But it's just like if we get used to some challenge, because they're in the news all day, like climate change, biodiversity, those are real challenges, and they should really be at the heart of every decision that we take in our life. The last IPCC report told us that it's time to act now. We cannot wait anymore. We have to make the decision, even if it's difficult, not only for us, but for the generation to come. How do we do that? Well, maybe we listen to nature first, and we stop making crazy things for short-term profit. In December in Montreal, it's going to be the COP on biodiversity. We're going to set the framework for the next 10 years for all the countries. We want to protect 30% of the planet. The negotiations are really hard, more than 2.5 years now, and we will decide that in Montreal in December. It is very, very important. It's going to be an historical moment, just like the Paris Agreement for climate in 2015. I now have the privilege to be the voice of the subnational government and cities around the table at the UN. I'm not sure we will succeed in December. So climate change is really at the heart of lots of things, but you also have to include biodiversity. And I think that in terms of communication, we can make good story with nature, but we have to act now. So how do we do that? First of all, on the long term, we have to invest in education. I don't think that I have to convince you on education, the importance of education here at McGill, but we have to invest in innovation. But wait a minute. It's not that technology will save the world. We will have to change also, but we need technology as well. And I don't think that with the emergency that we are in, there's place for exclusion. We have to all work together. You are actor of change. You are very, very important. And I don't think we will succeed if we don't bring more social justice. This is my job now to deal with all those countries at UN, and I can feel the frustration of poor country. They didn't bring the climate change problem, but they are facing all the problems. So we have to be more inclusive. I really think that the best investment that we can do is education. We all have a child in our life, and we have to decide what will be our legacy. Often I think about all that, and it's, to be honest, it's difficult to continue to do this battle because we move so slowly. But when I think about that beauty of solution, I don't think we have the right to do nothing. When I remember those 430 days isolated in Antarctica, where nature had a certain control on our life, I have to find the energy and the courage to continue this battle. But to be really honest, I sometimes have the impression that a part of me stayed there on a piece of ice, on a frozen land, and probably a big part of myself, a part of me which refuses to die.
OK, tranquillement, tranquillement.
Merci. Questions, commentaires? Il y a des micros dans la salle. Ça en prend toujours un ou une pour briser la glace, mais comme elle est rendue mince, ça devrait être... I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just switched in French. I don't know why. Please.
Merci. Merci. Thank you for sharing such personal things with us. I have a comment and a question. My comment is that your description of how you would be changed by what you were doing and how that would affect your relationships and family and friends and partners reminded me of soldiers coming back from World War II and their families could not understand what they'd been through. And I guess there would be many, many examples of that. And I guess you must have had extremely hard discussions with your friends and family before you did this. You mentioned that you spoke with NASA psychologists of how you would be affected. So that's just incredible, your commitment to do that anyways. My question is about your boat. Why the sailboat? I guess it's a hybrid, of course, but was it a carbon footprint issue? Was it a low sound level for the whales? Why the sailboat?
Well, first, I should say that 8 months before our departure, I quit almost everything in my life, including my relationship at that time, just because I needed to be focused. That's probably extreme, but you know, that's because the Chilean just before us made the same kind of expedition, and they had during that expedition 6 persons died, you know, in crevasse and all that. So my first goal was to bring everybody back home. That was my first goal, and we succeeded. My best friend was the psychologist. It took months and months to convince him to join the expedition because he had a little girl, 5 years old, and he didn't want to leave, you know, her behind. So, but when we came back, it was like, for example, I'm going to use his example. He's a psychologist. We were followed, like I said, with NASA and all the psychologists. We had to fill psychological questionnaire every week, and at the end of each month, a bigger one. And we're not completely crazy. We realized that it was always the same kind of question, but in a different order and all that. And we realized by ourselves that our answer was changing. So that showed the level of change that you know that you experience. So when we came back, like the psychologist knew all that, so he decided to go with his family on a small island, spent 5 weeks there, just to be focused on their relationship. But it didn't work because we were so different, so different. And it's funny because on the 13, the only one who kept his family intact was our cameraman. He was 60 years old, and he didn't want to go too deep during the expedition. So what he was doing, you will see the image, he was shuffling the entire boat, and after that, the continent. So he was, just because he didn't want to have too much time to think and all that, So that was really, really special. The boat was probably the best boat for that kind of expedition because it's not too big. It's really, really low on fuel consumption because it's a sailboat. It was important for us that our footprint was as low as possible. And and we used the sails more than what we thought at first, because we always had a very good wind and all that. So that was the perfect boat for that kind of expedition. If you like that boat, we can make a deal. He's in the port of Montreal still, and I'd like, to be honest, to create a project with, because we spent lots of time around the world. We were very popular on the web and television and all that, and I'd like to give that back to, to people here. So we will try to make something with museum or something, or give it to a university or foundation so they can continue. But to be honest, it's with the evolution of communication and TV and all that, there's so many channels, it's very difficult to have the same kind of budget that we had at that time, So it's good. So I don't think that, the future of SEDNA IV will be under my hand. Any other questions or? Yes, please.
Presentation. I was just wondering, is there a place on Earth you haven't been to with your boat yet?
Yeah, actually we were supposed, I never went to China. I was supposed to be there in August for the COP, because the COP in biodiversity was supposed to be in China, but so I never went to China. We spent lots of time in the ice with the boat. The last year of the 1,000 Days for the Planet, we were supposed to go spend lots of time in Africa, and it was the time when the budget started to get lower and lower, so we never really spent the time that I wanted to spend in Africa. But the other place, we went pretty much everywhere with it.
So you're not ready, are you ready to sail on the SEDNA again, or now you're going to just concentrate on your Odyssey and doing your work at COP? And
well, I got so many examples of how I can change things now. One example is, well, I should probably not say that, but like I remember when we were in Paris in 2015 at the COP, I was with the Prime Minister and we had a dinner about Anticosti Island. And I was explaining, I always try to bring science into politics. They hate that, actually. But, and I was explaining that it was really something to try to do some fracking on an island in the middle of the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And the heritage, could be very, something really bad. And he was thinking and thinking. And the day after, we launched a big program to help, developing countries with climate change. And I was on stage with Al Gore and the Prime Minister at that time. So that was a great project. So journalists didn't have any tough question because everybody liked the project. So one journalist asked a question like, don't you think that there's something strange? You're announcing a great project, to fight climate change, but you want to drill on Anticosti. And then he started to answer, and all the information that I gave him the night before, just bang, 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 and that was the end of Anticosti project. No more drilling. It was finished. So this is the kind of situation that I like, to be honest, when you're close to the people who has a certain power and be able to influence them. So what I do really often is I bring science, around the table for decision. I don't succeed all the time, but sometimes.
And one last question. I was just wondering about at the December COP, you're going to ask and propose that we try to save at least 30% of the planet.
Land and ocean, yeah.
And how do you arrive at 30%? Is that optimistic? Is 30% too high, or it's reachable?
It's the minimum that science is asking. It's the minimum, 30%. We will play a lot with different, let's say, well, the problem at UN is all decision has to be unanimous. So then we play a lot of corridor, just trying to convince. I'm going to give you one example. We had lots of problems with Brazil, for example. But now they will have a new president that will change the momentum, on that 30%. And to be honest, it will be at the end a question of money. It's always a question of money. And that, I thought for many, many years that the common sense will win. Forget it. It's not that. It's the money who win. So you have to change the way that you present things so they understand what you're saying about the environment. So, but we have to find a way to work with economy and ecology together, because we will not win, against money. Like in biodiversity, we know that a country like Brazil, like Gabon, they want to have money because they have lots of biodiversity. So they said, okay, well, we won't cut the Amazon, but how much are you ready to give us every year? You know, so it's kind of very strange sometimes, because everybody in that room are, you know, for most of it are, you know, biologists, doctor in biology and all that, but everybody's talking money now, you know, which is sad, I think. But so yeah, it's so I think that, you know, what we will be able to accomplish in December here in Montreal will be an historical moment if we find the right money, you know. But we'll see.
Thank you.
Hi. Hi. I just want to, I really appreciate the presentation. It's basically a presentation of my dream job, to work in nature and travel around the world. I have 3 questions. The first one is, what inspired you to become a biologist? And the second question is, what is the biggest difference, like once you pursue your journey, what is the biggest difference between your expectation and the reality? And my last question is, if you can give advice for a young adult who wants to pursue their career in biology and environmental science.
Okay. Do we have an hour? Okay, well, first of all, and it's part of the 3 answers, I'm from Drummondville. It's the place where you stop between Montreal and Quebec to, you know, so I was not supposed to be at sea at all, you know. I started to study birds, and then I wanted to see more and more birds, so I went on the north shore of Quebec in the Mingan Islands, and then I met a biologist there. He brought me in his Zodiac, and I remember that day. It was a foggy day. I didn't know exactly what I was doing. I knew he was working on whales, so we were just, you know, going out, far out, and then in the fog, a blue whale blew right beside our Zodiac. I was so touched by that moment that it completely changed my life, you know. And I started to work with whales. And during that trip, I realized, I spent like a few weeks in the Mingan Island, and I realized that it was the first time that I could see very, very far away and not see any piece of land and there was something there that was calling me, you know. I wanted to just go further and further. And I accept to push my dreams. And this is probably the best advice that I can tell you, you know. You have right to dream, and you should dream, you know. And very often people around you, you know, when I started, my family was just saying, "Are you crazy? You know, what are you doing with whales?" Nobody was working with whale at that time, but I followed my passion, you know. And this is probably the best advice that I can tell you: just follow your passion and believe in the goal that you want to achieve. You know, it's and what was the first part of your question?
Oh, it's what is. I think you answered the first question. So the second question is like the biggest difference between your expectation and reality.
Well, that's not. I really thought that with our little group we could change the world. You know, I really, you know, we were convinced, and we had no money, but we had a big boat, and we had just debt, and you know, we needed a miracle every year to continue, but we were convinced that we were able to change the world. And the success that we had, you know, on the internet, for example, was just phenomenal. You know, so we were really convinced that. But after all those years, I should say that you know it didn't change a lot. You know, for example, climate change. We heard about climate change for so many years, but when you look at the GHG emission, we didn't succeed at all, you know. So I realized that my dream of changing the world was not something that I achieved. So that was difficult at one point. So, but what can I do, you know? I can be on my little farm now and where I grow garlic, but I need to try at least to make a difference with the people around me that are really close to the power now. So, but I hope that we will have a new generation of you know, political people who will make real difference. But for that, we need you. It's going to be under your hand now. And sorry for what we did, but...
You don't have to be. Thank you.
Thank you. No other question? Thank you very much.